The space was cold and dark. Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly through the cargo bay of his ship, the Horizon's Edge. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Behind him, 3 crew members in white medical suits moved carefully around a strange object. It was a body, but not a human body. They had found the alien ship 2 days ago floating dead in space. Nothing worked on that ship. No lights, no power, no heat. Everything inside was frozen or broken. The crew had searched through the dark corridors with their flashlights, expecting to find only corpses. But then they found her. Still alive. Somehow Jake watched as Dr. Amy Chen bent over the alien girl. Amy's scanner made quiet beeping sounds. The girl was small, maybe as tall as a human teenager. Her skin was pale blue like ice under moonlight. It seemed to glow a little under the bright lights of the cargo bay. Her eyes were huge and completely black with no white parts at all. They moved around the room, looking at everything, seeing everything. The girl wore torn clothes that might have been a uniform once. Her hands shook even though someone had wrapped a silver thermal blanket around her. She sat on the medical bed and said nothing. Amy moved closer. The alien girl pulled back fast, her black eyes going wide. Amy stopped and held up both hands. She spoke in a soft voice, explaining what she was doing before she did it. The girl watched but did not speak. She did not run away either. Can she talk? Jake asked quietly. Amy looked at her scanner. Her body seems fine. No physical damage to her throat or mouth. But trauma can do strange things. She might be in shock. The first few days were difficult. Ben Rodriguez, who handled all communications, tried everything he knew. He played different sound patterns. He showed her pictures. He used the computer to make words in every known alien language. The girl would sometimes nod yes or shake her head no. But she never made a sound. Sophie Kim was the ship's expert on alien life. She tried to communicate using simple drawings. She drew a picture of the Horizon's Edge. The girl touched it with one finger and nodded. Sophie drew a picture of her dead ship. The girl looked away. They had to figure out what she could eat. Amy was worried about this. Alien food and human food were usually very different. What was safe for humans might poison her. What she needed might not exist on their ship. Amy started with water. The girl drank it slowly, carefully. No bad reaction. Then Amy tried simple bread. The girl ate a small piece. She chewed slowly as if testing it. Then she ate more. Amy tried rice. Then plain chicken. Then vegetables. The girl could eat human food. This was good luck, maybe the only good luck they had with her. Amy watched every meal carefully, looking for any signs of sickness. But the girl seemed fine. She ate everything they gave her. She never left food on her plate. She never asked for more. She never complained. She just ate in silence and then cleaned her plate. The crew started calling her Kira. Sophie suggested it because they needed to call her something better than the survivor or the alien girl. Nobody knew if Kira was close to her real name. She could not tell them. But when they said it, she did not seem to mind. Kira stayed in the medical bay for the first week. Amy wanted to keep her close for observation. Kira sat on her bed and watched the doctors and nurses work. She watched how they used their tools. She watched how they talked to each other. She watched everything with those huge black eyes that seemed to miss nothing. On the 8th day, Amy said Kira could move around the ship if she wanted. They gave her guest quarters near the medical bay. The room was small but clean. It had a bed, a desk, and a window that showed the stars outside. Kira spent a lot of time at that window. Jake found her there one evening. He had been walking through the ship, checking on things like he always did. He saw her standing at the window, looking out at the endless dark. He almost walked past. She probably wanted to be alone. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way she stood there so still, so quiet, like she was waiting for something that would never come. Jake walked into the room and sat down in the chair by the wall. He did not sit too close. He did not want to scare her. Kira did not turn around. She kept looking at the stars. They sat like that for a while. The silence felt big but not bad. After some time, Jake started talking. He did not know why. He did not expect her to answer. But the quiet felt like it needed filling. He told her about their mission. They had been exploring the outer edge of the Kepler system, mapping planets, looking for resources. He told her about Earth, the planet where humans came from. He described the oceans and mountains and cities. He told her about the stars, how many there were, how far apart. He talked about the loneliness of space, about how small you felt out here in the big dark. Kira listened. She did not move or make a sound, but Jake could tell she was listening. Her head tilted slightly toward him. Her breathing changed rhythm with his words. When he finished talking, the silence came back, but it felt different now. Less empty, more like a shared thing between them. Then Kira turned around. She looked at Jake directly. Her black eyes caught the light from the window, and for just a second they did not look completely alien. They looked sad. They looked grateful. They looked human. She walked over to where he sat. She moved slowly, carefully, like she did not want to startle him. Then she reached out and put her hand on his arm. Just for a moment. Her touch was warm and gentle. Then she pulled her hand back and walked out of the room. Jake sat there for a long time after she left. That simple touch had surprised him. It was such a human thing to do. A gesture that said thank you without words. A gesture that said I understand without explaining what she understood. Later that night, Jake met with his senior crew in the briefing room. Amy reported that Kira was physically healthy. Her body had adapted well to their ship's environment. Sophie said Kira was intelligent and observant. She learned their basic systems quickly. Ben said his communication attempts had all failed, but he was not giving up. What do we do with her? Greg Parker asked. He was the chief engineer, a practical man who liked clear answers. We take care of her, Jake said. We bring her home. We help her any way we can, and if she never talks? Greg asked. Then she never talks, Jake said. We are not going to force her. Whatever happened on that ship, whatever she went through, it was bad enough to kill everyone but her. She gets to heal at her own pace. The others nodded. They were good people. They understood. That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about Kira standing at the window, looking out at the stars. He wondered what she was thinking. He wondered if she was looking for her home planet, even though it was too far away to see. He wondered if she was the last of her kind, or if there were others out there somewhere. He wondered what it felt like to be the only survivor. To wake up and find everyone you knew was gone, to be rescued by aliens who could not understand your language, to be taken away from everything familiar, heading toward a strange planet full of strange creatures. Jake had always known space was dangerous. But this was different. This was not about engines failing or running out of air. This was about losing everything that made you who you were. Losing your voice. Losing your home. Losing your people. And yet Kira was here. She was alive. She ate their food and walked their corridors and looked at their stars. She was surviving. Maybe that was enough for now. Maybe survival was the only story that mattered. And maybe in time she would be ready to tell them what had happened, to speak again. To become more than just the silent survivor from the dead ship. But that would be her choice. Her time, her voice. All they could do was wait, and take care of her, and hope that someday she would trust them enough to speak. 2 weeks passed. Kira started to move around the ship more. At first she only went between her room and the medical bay. Then she began exploring. She would walk slowly through the corridors, her hand trailing along the wall. She studied everything. The control panels, the safety signs, the way doors opened and closed, the lights that blinked different colors. The crew got used to seeing her. She was always quiet. She never got in the way. If someone came down a corridor toward her, she would step aside and wait for them to pass. If someone spoke to her, she would listen carefully, but she would not respond. Sophie noticed that Kira liked the common areas best. The places where people gathered. The recreation room where crew members played games or watched movies. The gym where they exercised. But most of all, she liked the mess hall. The mess hall was where everyone ate their meals. It was not a fancy place, just a big room with tables and chairs. But it was the heart of the ship. 3 times a day, people came here. They ate together. They talked and laughed and argued. They shared stories about their shifts. They complained about the food or praised it. They became more than just crew members. They became friends. Kira would sit in the corner during mealtimes. She had her own small table there. She would eat her food slowly, but her eyes never stopped moving. She watched everything. How people sat together in groups. How they passed food to each other. How they smiled when someone told a funny story. How they touched each other's arms or shoulders when they talked. Greg Parker was the first to notice how focused her watching was. He mentioned it to Amy one day. She is not just looking around, he said. She is studying us, like she is trying to figure something out. Amy thought about this. Maybe she is trying to understand human behavior, social patterns, how we interact. It makes sense. She is alone with us. She needs to learn how to fit in. But there was something else that caught Kira's attention more than anything. The kitchen. The horizon's edge was big enough to have a real galley, not just food machines. And working in that galley was Kyle Martinez. Kyle had been a chef on Earth, a real restaurant chef with his own place in Chicago. People used to wait hours for a table. Food critics wrote good things about his cooking. He was successful. He was comfortable, but he was bored. So he signed up for a deep space exploration mission. His friends thought he was crazy. Why would you leave everything? They asked. Why would you trade a successful restaurant for cooking on a spaceship? Because I want to see what is out here, Kyle told them. Because cooking for the same people in the same place every day was making me forget why I loved it. Because space is big and strange and maybe I will find new things to cook with. New flavors. New ideas. Kyle took his work seriously. Even with limited supplies, he made real meals. He did not just heat up prepackaged food. He chopped vegetables. He mixed spices. He tasted and adjusted. He made the crew feel like they were eating in a real kitchen, not a spaceship. Kira started appearing in the kitchen doorway. She never came inside. She just stood there and watched. Kyle noticed her on the third day. It made him uncomfortable at first. Those big black eyes watching every move he made, never blinking, never looking away, but she was so quiet, so careful not to bother him. After a while, Kyle stopped feeling nervous. He got used to her presence. Sometimes he even forgot she was there, until he would turn around and see her still watching, still completely focused. One afternoon, Kyle was making dinner. He was cutting onions. The knife moved fast, turning the onion into perfect small pieces. When he looked up, he saw something interesting. Kira was not just watching his hands. She was watching the rhythm. Her eyes followed the knife down, up, like she was counting the movements, learning the pattern. Kyle moved to the stove. He had 3 pans going at once. One needed more heat. One needed less. One needed to be stirred. He made these adjustments without thinking. He had been cooking for so long that his hands knew what to do. But Kira was watching when he turned the heat up under the first pan. She leaned forward just a little bit. Her eyes went from the control knob to the flame. She was measuring, learning, understanding. Then Kyle tasted the sauce. He took a small spoon, dipped it in, tasted it. His face changed just a tiny bit. Something was not quite right. He added a pinch of salt. Tasted again, better. He added a little pepper. Tasted once more, perfect. Kira watched his face through all of this. She was learning to read his expressions. The small frown that meant something needed fixing. The slight nod that meant it was good. The tiny smile that meant it was exactly right. That evening, Kyle went to see Amy. He told her what he had noticed. She is not just watching me cook, he said. She is learning how to do it. I think she understands what I am doing. Amy was interested but careful. She has been through trauma. Maybe this is her way of coping. Maybe watching you cook makes her feel safe. Or maybe she is just curious. Try not to read too much into it. But Kyle could not shake the feeling. He had taught people to cook before. He knew what it looked like when someone was really paying attention. When they were not just watching but learning, memorizing, preparing to try it themselves. The way Kira watched him reminded him of his childhood. His grandmother had taught him to cook. He used to stand in her kitchen for hours, watching her make bread and stews and pies. He never asked questions. He just watched. And slowly over time he learned. Not from words, but from seeing. From understanding the small details. The exact moment to add something. The right temperature. The proper timing. That was what Kira was doing. He was sure of it. More weeks passed. Kira became part of the ship's routine. She was no longer the scared survivor they had pulled from the wreckage. She walked with more confidence. She helped where she could. Greg discovered that she could read their maintenance displays. Not all of them, but the simple ones with pictures and numbers. She started pointing out small problems. A door that was not closing properly. A light that was about to burn out. A pressure gauge that was reading wrong. She was right every time. Greg started bringing her along on his rounds. She could not tell him what was wrong with words, but she could show him. She would point at something. He would check it. There would always be a problem that needed fixing. Amy found that Kira had reorganized the medical supply closet. She had done it while Amy was sleeping. The new system made more sense than the old one. Similar items were grouped together. Emergency supplies were in front. Common medicines were at eye level. Everything was easier to find. Sophie taught Kira how to use the ship's computer. Basic things at first: how to look up information, how to watch videos, how to read simple documents. Kira learned fast. Within days, she could navigate the system better than some of the crew. But through everything, she kept returning to the kitchen. Every day during meal preparation, she would appear in the doorway. Kyle started to expect her, started to cook a little slower so she could see everything clearly. He did not do it on purpose at first. But eventually he realized he was teaching her, even though no words passed between them. Even though she never asked a single question. One night, Jake was doing his evening walk through the ship. He liked to check on things before he slept, make sure everything was quiet and safe. He passed by the kitchen and stopped. Kira was at her usual spot in the doorway. Kyle was cleaning up after dinner. Neither of them spoke, but there was something in the air. An understanding. A connection. Kyle would wash a pot and Kira would nod slightly as if agreeing with his method. Kyle would put away a knife and Kira would track it with her eyes, memorizing its place. Jake did not interrupt. He just watched for a minute. Then he moved on. He was starting to understand something. Kira was not broken. She was not lost. She was preparing, building herself back up, learning their ways, making herself useful, making herself belong. She would speak when she was ready, not before. And whatever she was learning in that kitchen, whatever Kyle was unknowingly teaching her, it meant something important. Jake just did not know what yet. None of them did. They would not understand until much later, until everything fell apart, until they needed her. But Kira knew. She was watching. She was learning. She was waiting for the right moment, and that moment was coming. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning. Jake was in his quarters going through supply reports. The journey home would take another 4 months. Everything looked fine. Food was adequate. Water recycling was working perfectly. Fuel was more than enough. They would make it home with supplies to spare. Then the alarm started screaming. Jake ran to the bridge. Ben was already at his station, fingers flying over the controls. Sophie burst through the door behind Jake. Greg's voice came through the speaker, shouting something about the agricultural bay. "What happened?" Jake demanded. "Micrometeorite shower," Ben said, his voice tight. "Small ones. Too small for the defense grid. Too fast to avoid. We took multiple hits, damage report," Jake ordered. Ben's face went pale as he read the screen. "The agricultural bay. We lost containment. Everything in there is gone." The agricultural bay was where they grew fresh food. Vegetables, fruits, herbs. Things that made their meals taste like real food instead of space rations. Jake felt his stomach drop. How much did we lose? Ben checked the inventory. 60% of our fresh food. The bay vented into space. Everything flash froze in seconds. Jake closed his eyes. "Can we seal it?" "Already done," Greg's voice came through the speaker. "Emergency bulkheads closed automatically. The rest of the ship is fine. But the bay is a total loss. We will need to rebuild it completely when we get home." Jake called an emergency meeting. Everyone gathered in the briefing room. The mood was dark. Kyle stood against the wall, his arms crossed. His face looked empty. Jake explained the situation. "We lost most of our fresh food. What we have left is basic supplies: flour, some dried goods, oil, spices, and we have the nutrient paste." The nutrient paste. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. It was food designed for survival. It had all the vitamins and proteins and calories a human body needed, but it tasted like nothing. It looked like gray mud. It had the texture of wet sand. People could live on it for months. But nobody wanted to. "Can you make the other supplies last?" Jake asked Kyle. Kyle shook his head slowly. "Maybe a few weeks, but after that, it is just the paste." For 4 months, the room was quiet. Then Greg spoke up. "It is just food. We can handle it. We have been through worse," but everyone knew he was wrong. It was not just food. Food was how they stayed human out here. Food was when they gathered together and talked and laughed. Food was the thing that made them feel like they were home, even when home was thousands of light years away. The first week was not too bad. Kyle used what he had left.
He made simple meals.
Bread when he could, rice dishes, basic soups. The portions were smaller. The variety was limited. But it was still real food. The second week was harder. The supplies ran lower. Kyle had to stretch everything. Meals became plain, just enough to fill the stomach. No extras, no treats, no little surprises that made dinner something to look forward to. By the third week, the last of the good food was gone. Kyle stood in his kitchen and stared at the storage lockers. All he had left was flour, some oil, and containers of nutrient paste. Hundreds of containers, enough to keep them alive for months. But that was all. Just alive, not living. Just surviving. The change in the crew was fast. Meals stopped being social events. People would grab their paste, eat it quickly at their stations, and get back to work. The mess hall became empty. Nobody wanted to sit there and eat gray paste while staring at each other. Arguments started. Small things at first. Ben snapped at Sophie for talking too loud during his shift. Greg yelled at one of his engineers for making a tiny mistake. Amy stopped doing her friendly rounds, claiming she had too much paperwork. The corridors became quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, the heavy kind, the kind that meant people were avoiding each other. The kind that meant everyone was too tired and frustrated and sad to bother talking. Sophie came to Jake's quarters one evening. She looked exhausted. "We are falling apart," she said without greeting. Not physically. Mentally. Everyone is giving up. Jake knew she was right. He had seen it too. The way people moved slower, smiled less, stopped caring about things that used to matter. It had only been 3 weeks. They had 4 months to go. If they kept going like this, they would tear each other apart before they reached Earth. "What do we do?" Sophie asked. Jake had no answer. They had enough calories, enough water, enough air. All the physical needs were met. But humans needed more than that. They needed hope. They needed something to look forward to. They needed to feel like people, not just machines. And Kira had disappeared. Amy mentioned it during the meeting. Kira had stopped coming to the kitchen. She stopped walking the corridors. She stayed in her quarters all day. When Amy checked on her, she said Kira was physically fine. But something was wrong. She sat by her window and stared out at space. She barely ate. She looked sad in a way that worried Amy. "Maybe she can sense it," Amy said. "The way the crew is feeling. Maybe it is affecting her too. Or maybe she just misses the food," Greg had said, trying to make a joke. Nobody laughed. Kyle stopped cooking entirely. There was nothing to cook. Just paste to portion out. He still went to the galley 3 times a day. He still prepared the meals. But it was not cooking. It was just filling containers. Anyone could do it. He had become useless. One night, Kyle sat alone in the empty mess hall. He had a container of paste in front of him. He had not eaten yet. He was staring at the gray substance, thinking about his restaurant back on Earth. The smell of bread baking. The sound of vegetables being chopped. The satisfaction of seeing people enjoy his food. All of that was gone. And in 4 months, if they even made it back with their sanity intact, he would have to start over. Try to remember why he had loved cooking in the first place. Try to find the passion again. He did not hear her approach. He never did. Kira was so quiet. But suddenly she was there, standing next to his table. He looked up. She was staring at his paste with those big black eyes. Then she looked at him. And for the first time in weeks, she looked focused instead of sad. She reached out and touched his hand. Just briefly. The same gesture she had used with Jake months ago. The one that meant thank you. The one that meant I understand. The one that meant you are not alone. Then she turned and left the mess hall. Kyle watched her go. For a moment, just a moment, he felt something other than despair. He felt curious. What had that meant? Why now? Why had she come out of her quarters after weeks of hiding? He did not know it yet. But everything was about to change. The silent girl was about to speak. And her words would save them all. It was late. Most of the crew was sleeping. Kyle was in the galley again, staring at the inventory screen. He did this every night now, looking at the numbers, hoping they would somehow change, hoping some miracle would appear and give them real food again. But the numbers never changed. Flour, a little oil, dried beans that would take too much water to cook, spices he could not use because they had nothing to flavor, and paste. So much paste. container after container of gray survival food. He was so focused on the screen that he did not hear her come in. When he finally sensed another presence and turned around, Kira was standing right beside him. He jumped slightly. His heart raced. "Hey, Kira," he said, putting his hand on his chest. "You scared me. I did not hear you come in." She did not react to his words. She was staring at the inventory screen with intense focus. Her black eyes moved over the numbers, reading them. Understanding them, Kyle watched her. He had not seen her in weeks. Not since the accident. She looked different, thinner, paler. But there was something in her expression now, something determined, something awake. She reached out and touched the screen. Her fingers were long and delicate. She scrolled through the inventory with smooth movements. She had learned their systems well. Better than Kyle had realized. She stopped at the dried goods section. The flour, the oil, the spices, the beans. She studied each item carefully. Then she looked up at Kyle, and her mouth opened. Kyle's breath caught. Was she going to speak? After all these months, his heart pounded, her voice came out rough, like an instrument that had not been played in a long time. The sounds were strange, shaped by a throat not built for human language. But the words were clear. 3 words that would change everything. "I can cook." Kyle stared at her. He could not move, could not speak. His mind tried to process what he had just heard. After months of silence, after weeks of despair, those 3 simple words, "What?" he finally managed to say. Kira pointed at the screen, then at the kitchen equipment, then at Kyle. She took a breath. Speaking seemed to hurt. Or maybe it was just difficult. But she pushed through. "I watched you. 3 months. Every day. I learned how you cut, how you heat, how you mix, how you taste. Different from my world, but the same idea. Heat plus time plus ingredients equals transformation. I can help." Kyle felt tears starting in his eyes. She had been learning. All that time, all those hours standing in the doorway watching every move he made. She had been preparing for this. Preparing to give back. "You want to cook?" he asked. "With what we have left?" Kira nodded. She touched the screen again. "Flour, water, oil, salt. Can make bread. Not like yours. Like mine. Different, but good. And paste." She made a face. "Can change it. Make it better. Not good, but better." Kyle wiped his eyes. "Show me," he said. What happened next was like watching magic. Kira moved to the counter. She pulled out the flour, the oil, the water. She looked at Kyle. He nodded. She began to work. Her hands moved with confidence. She had never actually cooked on human equipment before, but she understood the principles. Heat, mixture, time. She mixed the flour and water and oil in ratios Kyle would never have thought of. The dough that formed was darker than normal bread dough, denser. It looked wrong. But the smell. When she started to heat it, the smell filled the galley. It was incredible, rich and earthy and completely unlike any bread Kyle had ever made. It was alien, but in a good way, in a way that made your mouth water. Then she turned to the paste. Kyle had tried everything with the paste. Nothing worked. It always tasted the same, gray and bland and depressing. But Kira did something different. She heated it slowly, very slowly. She added spices in combinations Kyle had never considered. A little of this, a tiny bit of that. She stirred constantly. She tasted. She adjusted. She worked with focus and precision. The paste began to change. The color shifted from gray to a light brown. The texture became less like wet sand and more like actual porridge. The smell changed too. It started to smell like food instead of chemicals. Kyle watched in amazement. "How did you know to do this?" he asked. Kira kept working as she spoke. "On my ship before we had emergency food. Like paste, but worse. Much worse. We learned to make it better. Heat changes molecules. Spices hide bad taste. Texture matters as much as flavor. You taught me that. By watching you, the smell was drawing others now." Amy appeared first at the galley door. Her eyes went wide when she saw Kira cooking. Then Sophie arrived, then Ben, then Greg. Soon half the crew was crowded in the corridor watching through the doorway. "Is she cooking?" Sophie whispered. And talking, Amy added, her voice full of wonder. Jake pushed through the crowd. He had been sleeping. Someone had woken him with news that he needed to see the galley immediately. He stopped in the doorway and took in the scene. Kira and Kyle working side by side, both of them moving in rhythm. The food, the smell, the hope on everyone's faces. Kira looked up and saw all the people watching. For a moment she looked scared, shy. But then Kyle put his hand on her shoulder. She took a breath and kept working. When the food was ready, Kira and Kyle brought it to the mess hall. The crew gathered. Nobody said much. They just watched as plates were filled. The bread dark and dense and strange. The paste transformed into something that actually looked edible. Jake took the first bite. The bread was different from any he had tasted. It was chewy, almost grainy. But it was good. Really good. And the paste. It did not taste great, but it tasted like food. Real food with flavor and texture and warmth. Around the room, people started eating. And for the first time in weeks, they started talking, commenting on the flavors, asking Kira questions. She answered haltingly, her voice still rough, still uncertain, but she answered. "How long have you been able to talk?" Amy asked gently. Kira thought about this. 2 months, maybe. I could make sounds. But I wanted to wait until I could help, until I had something to give back. You saved me, fed me, protected me. I wanted to be useful, not just a burden. You were never a burden, Jake said firmly. Kira shook her head. You say that? But I felt it. I needed to contribute. So I watched Kyle, learned cooking, waited for the right time, when you needed it most. She looked around the mess hall, at all the people eating together, talking together, smiling for the first time in weeks. On my ship, she said quietly, my people, we died because we stopped doing this. Stopped eating together. Stopped sharing. When food ran low, everyone took their rations alone. We forgot how to be together. Forgot why we wanted to survive. Not lack of food killed us. Lack of hope. The mess hall went quiet. Everyone understood now. Why she had waited. Why she had learned. Why she had chosen this moment to speak. Thank you, Jake said, for waiting. For learning. For this, Kira smiled. It was small and uncertain. But it was real. No, she said. Thank you for showing me that survival is not enough, that food is more than fuel, that eating together means we are family. That night, the horizon's edge felt different. The corridors did not seem so dark. The silence was not so heavy. People went to bed with full stomachs and lighter hearts. 3 words had changed everything. I can cook. 3 simple words from a girl who had chosen silence for months, who had waited for the perfect moment, who had understood what they needed better than they did themselves. And this was only the beginning. The days after that first meal were different. Better. The crew started gathering in the mess hall again. Not because the food was fancy. It was not. It was still mostly paste and the bread Kira had learned to make. But it was prepared with care, with creativity, with hope. Kira and Kyle worked together every day. They became a team. Kyle taught her his techniques. She taught him hers. They learned from each other. They found ways to make the limited supplies stretch further than anyone thought possible. Kira showed them fermentation. On her world, she explained, food was often scarce. Her people had learned to preserve things, to change them over time, to create new flavors from old ingredients. She taught Kyle how to take the beans and ferment them into something tangy and rich, how to use time itself as an ingredient. Kyle showed her the science behind human cooking, why certain temperatures mattered, how proteins changed when heated, why some spices worked together and others did not. Kira absorbed everything. She asked questions constantly now that she could speak. Her vocabulary grew every day. But more than recipes and techniques, something else was happening. Through food, through the ritual of preparing and sharing meals, Kira was teaching them about her culture, about her lost world. She told them about meals on her planet. They were not quick. They lasted hours sometimes. Each dish represented something. A memory, a relationship, a historical event. Food was not just pleasure or fuel. It was how her people remembered, how they honored the past, how they built connections with each other. She described a traditional meal that happened once a year. Everyone brought one dish, something that represented their family. The meal would have hundreds of different foods. It took all day to eat. People would tell stories about each dish, where it came from, who made it first, what it meant. That is beautiful, Sophie said. We have something similar on Earth. different cultures. Same idea, food is memory. Food is identity. Yes, Kira said. Universal, I think. All beings who eat together become family. All beings who share food share something deeper. She talked more about her ship, about the plague that killed her crew. It started slow, she explained. A sickness. Not physical, mental. People became depressed, stopped caring. They ate their meals alone in their quarters. They stopped talking, stopped gathering. Then the ship's systems started failing. When people tried to fix them, they realized nobody remembered how. Everyone had become too isolated, too separate. By the time they understood what was happening, it was too late. The systems failed faster. People gave up. They stopped fighting to survive. They just waited to die. Kira survived because she locked herself in the cold storage. She gambled that someone might find them, that someone might care enough to look inside a dead ship. And you did, she said, looking at Jake. You found me. You brought me here. You fed me when you did not know if I could ever help you back. That is grace. The crew listened to her stories. They shared their own in return. Ben talked about his family on Earth, the big dinners they had every Sunday, how he missed them. Amy talked about learning to cook from her mother, the recipes that had been passed down for generations. Greg talked about the first time he realized food was more than fuel. It was during a difficult mission. Someone made real pizza from scratch. That pizza saved their morale, saved the mission. Weeks passed. The journey home continued. The food was still simple, still limited. But meals became the best part of everyone's day. Not because of what they ate, because of who they ate with, because of the stories they shared, because of the connection they felt. Kira changed too. She was no longer the scared survivor. She laughed now, made jokes. Her voice grew stronger. Her confidence grew. She became part of the crew. Not a guest, not a rescued alien, a member of the family. One evening, Jake made his usual rounds. He found Kira in the observation deck, the same place where they had sat months ago, where she had touched his arm for the first time. He sat down beside her. You changed everything, he said. Those 3 words, I can cook. They saved us. Kira shook her head. No, you changed everything. You picked up stranger from dead ship, fed her, protected her, asked nothing in return. I only gave back what you showed me first. She looked at him. On my world, we have a saying. Translated, it means to feed another is to say you are worth keeping alive. You fed me when you did not know if I could ever contribute. Before I spoke, before you knew anything about me. That is not just kindness. That is something deeper. What is it? Jake asked. Humanity, she said. Real humanity. Not the species. The quality. The choice to care, to share, to believe that every life has value. Even alien life. Even silent life. Even broken life. She turned back to the window. When I saw you losing that after the accident, when I saw the crew falling apart, when I saw you forgetting your own humanity, I knew I could help. Because you taught me the most important lesson. Food is not the meal. Food is the act of sharing it. And humanity is not about being human. It is about choosing to be kind when you could choose not to be. They sat in comfortable silence. Behind them, in the mess hall, the crew was gathering for dinner. Kyle and Sophie were arguing in a friendly way about the right temperature for bread. Ben was laughing at something Greg said. Amy was setting out plates carefully, treating the simple meal with respect. Come, Kira said, standing. Almost time for meal. Cannot let bread burn. Jake followed her back. The mess hall was warm and bright. People were talking and smiling. The food was simple, still mostly paste and bread. But it was enough. More than enough. The horizon's edge still had months before reaching Earth. They still faced challenges. The supplies were still limited, but they would face it together. Over meals that mattered. With a girl who had been silent but chose to speak. Who had been alone but chose to belong. Who had been broken but chose to heal. That night, as Jake ate dinner with his crew, he understood something. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology, not weapons, not stubbornness. It was this, the simple act of breaking bread together, of sharing what little you have, of making meals not just for survival but for connection. Kira had learned this by watching them, and when they had forgotten it, she had given it back to them. 3 words, I can cook. 3 simple words that meant so much more. They meant, I see you, I understand you, I am one of you now. They meant we are family. We will survive together. We will be more than just survivors. They meant hope is not dead. Connection is possible. Tomorrow will be better than today. When dinner ended, people did not rush back to their stations. They stayed. They talked. They cleaned up together. They made plans for tomorrow's meal. They belonged to each other. Kira stood in the doorway of the galley watching them. Kyle came up beside her. "You did good," he said. "We did good," she corrected. "You taught me. I learned." We cooked. They ate. Everyone did their part. Kyle smiled. "Want to plan tomorrow's menu?" "Yes," she said. "I have ideas. Things from my world, things from yours. We combine them. Make something new. Something that belongs to all of us." They went into the galley together. Outside the window, the stars watched in their ancient silence. The universe was vast and cold and empty, but inside the horizon's edge there was warmth. There was laughter. There was food and family and hope. An alien girl had learned to cook. And in learning, she had taught them something more important. That survival was not enough. That you needed something to survive for. That the simplest acts, the ones we take for granted, are sometimes the ones that save us. 4 months later, the horizon's edge reached Earth. The crew disembarked together. They brought Kira with them. She was scared of the new planet. Scared of so many humans. Scared of what her future would hold. But Jake held her hand. Kyle walked beside her. Amy and Sophie and Ben and Greg surrounded her. She was not alone. She had family now. Human family. And they would help her through this new challenge, just as she had helped them through theirs. The first thing they did on Earth, all of them together, was have a meal. A real meal with fresh food and no paste. They sat around a big table in a restaurant. They talked and laughed and remembered their journey. They toasted Kira. They toasted each other. They toasted the simple truth that had saved them all. That food was more than fuel. That meals were more than eating. That cooking was an act of love. That sharing was an act of faith. That gathering together was how you stayed human. Even in the darkest times. Even in the coldest spaces. Even when hope seemed lost. And somewhere above them, in the vast darkness between worlds, the horizon's edge continued its orbit. Empty now, waiting for its next crew, its next journey, its next chance to prove that humanity in all its forms would always find a way to survive. Not just survive, but live together, over meals that mattered, with words that healed, with kindness that saved. 3 words had started it all. I can cook. 3 words from a silent alien girl. 3 words that changed everything.